Hello and welcome to another episode of Publishing a Tabletop RPG. I'm Adam Bell. I am publishing a game called The Locked Room Murder Mystery Game. It is a tabletop storytelling mystery for one or more players, as you see here, but I'm no longer calling it a tabletop RPG, and that's what this video is all about. Sort of. So you'll notice here on the image here, this is the Kickstarter that you should go follow because it will be running at some point next year. I've pushed it back. We've got a lot to talk about in this video if you've been following along, but create and solve an emergent murder mystery in this storytelling board game. I've sort of changed the language a bit here, and it's because I'm changing the physical design of the product. I am no longer making a book, which is what you would expect if I'm making a tabletop RPG. I am pushing to hopefully make a board game. I'm hoping to get a bunch of components in a box that you can pull off your shelf and be playing my game with no extra stuff. I'm not trying to define tabletop RPG as something where you can't pull it off the shelf and play it because you have to get extra stuff. But like that's a big difference in the production of a board game versus like a book that is a tabletop RPG. Is usually the book. The fans of the tabletop RPG understand when you say, "Hey, you have to go get your own bits. You have to bring your own dice. You have to bring your own note cards. You got to go print stuff off of my website. That kind of stuff." Fans of tabletop role-playing games like doing that stuff. Fans of board games don't like doing that stuff. So if I can prevent that stuff from being in the game by getting it produced as like a whole box, then I can call it a storytelling board game because the mechanics are very board gamey, which we'll touch on in a second. So yes, that's why I am switching maybe this video series to publishing a storytelling board game. It's a little semantic, but I'm sort of honing in on how my marketing is going to be for this and how I'm going to try to reach perhaps a broader audience than I normally do whenever I make a role-playing game that is for role-playing game fans. Cool. Yeah, so let me just talk about that, I guess, a little bit and how I came to this decision. It's been on my mind since the very first version of this game came out, the Ash Can, which is very much, it's like a zine that I had printed out for PAX Unplugged last year. You can get the PDF on my itch page, but I don't have any more of the zines, which is great. That means, I was able to sell about 80 of them before running out without really talking about it or advertising it. That is a good sign to me that this idea has legs. And the people that have played it have told me that they liked it. There's a great article on Skeleton Code Machine about it. Just sort of reinforcing that, yes, I have a good idea here. And reinforcing this idea that I have that I want to do this as good as I can, because as a game designer, like this idea that I have put together is maybe the closest thing I will get to, and I'm not saying ever, but the closest thing I'll get anytime soon to something that can have like a real broad appeal, right? Something that I can reach more than just people that like freak weird little role-playing games. Because that's what I like making those, but if I'm going to make money, whenever I make a game that is not just a freak little role-playing game, I should try to get it out to a broader audience. And that's a difference in publishing. That is a difference between making a little zine, between making a book, between making a whole board game, if the design allows for it, right? So the bulk of this video, what I'm going to be doing is coming up with a component list, because I need to start sourcing quotes from board game manufacturers so I can figure out like how to actually produce this game. Like I need to come up with a component list, basically like a bare minimum one, and then start thinking about like things that could supplement it, but get an idea for how much this is going to cost to produce, get an idea for the minimum order quantities that exist in board gaming versus, book creation. Usually the board game manufacturers, they want you to make at least 1,000, but usually like 1,500 to 2,000 are the minimum quantities, which means I got to be ready to sell that many and I got to be ready to store that many if I haven't sold them. And so I need to be able to set the price. I need to know how much it's going to cost. I need to be able to set the price that factors in the manufacturing, the shipping to me, the shipping to you, the shipping or the storage while I'm waiting to ship it, the storage while I'm waiting to sell it. I need to figure out, make sure it's viable as like a wholesale product. So yeah, there's a lot to that. I guess a quick primer on that. There are people, the common wisdom I think of old is that your game should be about the MSRP should be about 5 times your like total landed cost of producing it. But I think more and more as time goes on, as those total costs go up, and the margins shrink for especially a small game publisher like I am. I mean, I'm a barely a game. I mean, I'm a game publisher, but very, very small. This is going to be the most ambitious thing. So like the margins are so small that it needs to be able to make enough money at wholesale. Because if I sell to a game store, let's say it costs $5 to produce and ship this game to my door, right? If I sell it at a game store for $10, like here, game store, you can purchase my game for $10. That means they're probably going to sell it to you, the person buying the game, for about 20, because usually, this is rough and it depends on contracts and a whole bunch of stuff. But usually the wholesaler, the retailer buys it for half price and then sells it to you for whole price. So I need to be able to make money on the half price sale. Like if I'm selling it to your favorite game store so you could buy it there, I shouldn't be undercutting myself. So if it costs me $5, I need to sell it. Traditionally, it would be at least $25. But I don't think that's usually factoring in the price of art and storage and all of this other stuff. So really we're looking at $30 to $40, so that whenever I sell it for $20 to a store, I am still making like at least $10 per sale, because then you start bringing down the numbers. Like if we're talking about a 2000 game print run, $10, if I'm making $10 per sale, because it cost me $5 to make and $5 whatever, and I sell it to the store for 20, I need to make it. If I'm making at least $10 and I have 2,000 of them to sell, that's still only $20,000 for me. That's not enough for to live on. So the margins are outrageous, especially, I mean, the rent, the cost of food, everything. Like the prices, either the price needs to go up or the amount of sales need to go up. And I'm hoping the latter. Like I'm hoping I can get this game out to as many people as I can. That was a big ramble, but the point of it is that I think the board game version of this game gets to more people's tables than the book, because the book will have a much higher barrier of entry to play. You're going to have to print out a bunch of stuff. You're going to have to, get your own deck of cards, which you probably have. But the biggest thing is printing out the stuff, remembering to print and cut out a bunch of stuff before you play, which means it's going to be something you plan to play, not something you play spontaneously, not something you pull off your shelf and say, hey, do you want to make a murder mystery? And then your friends go, heck yeah, what do we got to do? And then you just start teaching them the game because I've produced the game so that you can just start playing it. Whew.
Okay.
Those are the arguments in favor of doing the box game. The problem is it's way harder. There's so much more work. There's component design. It's almost guaranteed that I'm going to have to get it produced internationally, likely in China. There are a lot of like really excellent board game manufacturers that are headquartered in China. Like if you play board games, probably most of the games are produced there or somewhere in Europe. Like I know Czech Games Edition produces their own games, but I don't think they really print games for other people. Like they just have their in-home print shop where they produce a bunch of their own games, and that works for them. But like, I'm not there. I haven't made code names yet to make millions and millions and do a great job in the game space. So it's likely that I have to contract out a factory in China, which it's a whole nother process that I have to learn, as opposed to working with the print shop that's in the same state as me, in the same time zone. And by default, there's no language barrier. There's no, it's not half a world away. So if something goes wrong, like with a prototype. I don't have to like wait for a new one to travel half the world away. They are 3 hours away, right? It's just a lot more stuff to do, especially for a solo publisher like me. But the first step is getting quotes. The first step is, can I come up with a component list, a list of things that are going to go into the game that will be satisfactory to me to play the game with? And that's what I wanted to do with this episode. I'm 10 minutes in of just like rambling about the box. I'll have to watch it back as usual. I'll have to watch it back to see if I have made any, even a lick of sense. But let's get to business. So I have been in talks. There are a lot of different manufacturers, and this is like one thing that I need to do is like go through them, see the pros and cons of each. Hopefully talk to people that have worked with them and, figure out like, what's the process like? What do you recommend? One that I do know has been recommended to me is this Watts Games. They have made a bunch of stuff. I believe they make the games for Facade Games, which are all very nice little productions. They're these like book games that have like a social deduction flavor to them. I know for a fact that they made, in 1 second, let me pull it up. I know for a fact they made Diatoms by a local game publisher to me, Ludo Liminal. I know Sabrina, the designer of Diatoms, was at the I had a meetup for Pittsburgh game designers, Pittsburgh tabletop game designers the other day, and we talked about this a little bit. But like, this game's gorgeous. I need to go and get myself a copy at Games Unlimited soon. That's our local game store. You can get it at your game store whenever it's there. But yeah, like, just looking at this, I know that whoever produced this, the factory that produced this, can make my game, because my game won't be as complicated as this. So yeah, the component list is the first step, though. That is where I need to start. And let me pull up a thing. And I have done a little bit of communication with Long Pack Games. They actually reached out. Whenever you start a Kickstarter, you'll get like 1 million emails from people. A lot of them are spammers trying to get you to pay them, so they'll call super backers to your project, which, like, get the hell out of here. But then the ones that are, at least it's useful to, like, quote unquote spam me, to cold call me when you see my thing, are game manufacturers. They're like, hey, you're making a game, do you want us to make your game? And that's the type of cold email that I don't mind as much, because at least you have something to offer, as opposed to the fun starters or whatever. So here's what I have so far. I sent to Longpack this list. It was a very rough list. I wouldn't do this normally, this rough, but they reached out to me. So I was like, whatever, this is what I need. If you can do it, that'd be cool. But I'm still working on this list. What I need is a book, and I don't know the page count yet, but we're going to say a 64-page book, because that's what I was shooting for with the... if it was just a book, it was going to be about 64 pages of rules and content and thoughts and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to need 25 dry erase cards. And so here is where I can start thinking, all right, I want these to be squares. And that's what I have behind me. This has been sort of lurking throughout the video, is a prototype design of the cards that I'm going to need. So the Locked Door Murder Mystery game centers around this grid of cards that are going to be, half of them are suspects. So that's, this is a mock-up. It won't be this ugly, I promise. Half of them are suspects. So the suspects are made up of name, trait, and description. And then in the corners, they'll be pointing towards other suspects, and the corner will be a relationship. So those all need to be on there, and this needs to be like a dry erase card, so that whenever you play, you can write on it, and then when you're done, you can erase it and be ready for your next game. So this is example layout. This is the idea. They shouldn't be rotated. So I'm going to need 25 of them because I need 13, or I need 12 suspects, and I need 13 clues. So 25 total dry erase cards. Currently thinking this 40 millimeter by 40 millimeter. So that's, or no, it was 100. 4 inches is what I want. I want it to be, it's got to be big enough that you can write on it and not smudge. And if you're using a marker, so let's just say 4 inches by 4 inches. And this is the kind of thing that can absolutely change based on like how expensive it is. Like if these big 4-inch square cards are too expensive, but like for some reason 3.5 inch is half the price, maybe I go 3.5 inch and I work on the design to account for it. Then I need dry erase markers. Then I need playing cards, which I think I want to do mini cards for this. So the playing cards are going to be, what do we have? My pictures. One second, pulling it up. Yeah, so this is like the components, right? The playing cards by default are like standard size playing cards, but they don't need to be. And I'm kind of imagining like nice little mini cards because then my references can be smaller, which we'll get to in a second. So the playing cards are simply for drawing a card, looking at the suit and the number. It's just ace through 5. So you look at the suit, you look at the number, and then you do something with that. And then you collect them on this reference until you hit a full house, and then something else happens. So the size needs to be enough that you can see the suit and the number. Because I'm doing this full print, like I don't need to do the standard suits. I can get like cute with it. I can do like the 5 of knives. I can do the 4 of guns. I don't know, maybe not guns, but that's the idea. And then mini cards, because I don't need much on the card and you're not holding them. Like mini cards aren't good for playing so much, but they're great for little references and little info bits. So that is that. Mini card size. I'm going to need 3 double-sided game boards. The size of this is going to be up in the air. It's based on the mini cards, because if you go back to this image, you'll see I'm tracking like where the ace, the 2, the 3, the 4, and the 5 are. But if the cards are smaller, that means this whole thing can be smaller, which is nice because that means the box can be smaller, which means I can get the price down, and make it worthwhile for you to buy, for me to sell, for game stores to sell as well. Pricing is a genuine nightmare. So we need the game boards, the 3 double-sided game boards. Those are, where do we have it? They're sort of references. They guide the play. They tell you what phase you're in, what you have to do on your turn in the phase, and then keep track of the cards, like I said. All right, next we need 2 game pieces. I imagine a knife, because there's a game piece called the Killer. It represents the spirit of murder in our story. And then the second one, a magnifying glass. It represents the sleuth. It's the spirit of, it's less the spirit. It's the influence of the detective in the story. Going back here, I have, this is like the ideal, I think, shape of them would be, these are game pieces from the game Lacuna. They're perfect little metal pieces. They're very easy to pick up and place, and that's what I need. I just need something that'll be easy to pick up and place, and I don't want to do plastic. If I can avoid doing plastic in my entire career, currently the only plastic I use is the tape I use for my boxes, which I have from moving, and once I'm out of moving tape, I will get paper packing tape. But moving on. I need those, and then I need 15 red wooden cubes, not pictured here, but those go on the different things. Okay, that's the rough list. I think there's a few more things I want. One is, if you'll notice on here, on my current sort of mock-up of the print and play kit, these are my clues, and the clues serve 2 purposes. Like the clue card serves 2 purposes in the game. One is to write down the clue, and the other is to write down the answer. And the answer is a very specific thing in the game where it's the relationship as discovered by the detective, the relationship between a suspect and a clue. And so it sort of sits between them. In the print and play version, I have it on the border of this card, which is fine. You're writing in pen or pencil. You can write nice and small. But not as much if you're writing with a dry erase marker. So I want it to be separate, I think. And the way that I'm thinking about doing that is making them be little tokens. So little, die cut cardboard chits. So answer number 1. And here I can just do it on the example layout. Answer number 1 gets placed here between them. And then we have this other sheet where you write down the actual answers and they're all central. And this will be nice just because it's like you can look at all of the answers the detective has found whenever it's time to synthesize them into the final story. So let's add that to the list. 1 sheet of die cut cardboard, about 10 tokens, and I'm sure I could come up with more reasons for tokens. 10 tokens that these ones in my mock-up are 20 millimeter by 20 millimeter. Cool. What else do I need? I don't know. Not too much. The markers, the stuff. Oh. I need something for, what's it called? Creating the detective. The detective's character sheet, basically. And this might just be a pad of sheets. But I'll have to think on it. The idea is that whenever you start your game, you will create your detective using this like table. So you'll take turns drawing cards. Let's say you drew a 3 of clubs. You're going to apply one of these 3 things to either the detective or one of the detective's close associates. So maybe your detective has a socialite as like one of their people that they're always talking to. Draw another card, boom. The socialite suddenly is the sleuth's romantic partner. Draw another card, boom. We've got another associate that's a union worker. Another card, our detective is incredibly frumpy. Another card, our detective is exceedingly pleasant. Blah, blah, blah. Keep going until you've got like a cast of your detective and 3 to 5 side characters that can reappear. Every time you play the game, you can pull them out. They'll reappear. So maybe just like a pad of paper would be good, because whenever it's time to pull them out, you can be like, boom, you want to use this detective, or whoosh, how about a new one, right? Pad of paper, size of the box. I think that's just about it. I'm going to have to go through and think again and again and again to make sure, but I think this, and then I'll have to go through and like do some rough design to get more sizes on things, more specific. But that's the component list. It's not that complicated. And so I'm hoping that I can get this to be a game that is $40 and feels like it's worth $40. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think the gameplay is worth $40, but will the product be worth it? And that's always a whole different thing. Okay. Been 24 minutes. Maybe that's good enough. Thank you for coming to my series on publishing a storytelling board game. I will see you next time. Let me know if you have any thoughts or advice for me. That'd be awesome. Cheers.